We're back with more Tapped Out with Brendan Tobin and Sean Levine on the BetQL Network.
Rolling right along here on the BetQL Network with Brendan Tobin. It's me, the sports machine, Sean Levine. Let's get into some news in the world of fighting. We'll get to the Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler stuff here in just a couple of minutes. The press conference in Dublin was called off. Does that mean the fight is going to be called off? Is there any sort of a replacement out there? Again, we'll get to all the Conor McGregor, Michael Chandler stuff here in just a couple of minutes. Speaking of fights and being rescheduled, Mike Tyson and Jake Paul is back on for November 15th. I remember last week on the show, you said they might as well not just postpone it and just go ahead and cancel it. You were talking about Mike Tyson's 58 years old, and guys who are that close to 60 shouldn't be fighting. You always talk about nobody gives a damn about Jake Paul. I assume your feelings haven't changed in a week now that we know that the fight is back on.
No, my feelings haven't changed. And look, I'm not surprised that it's getting rescheduled, but I also won't be surprised if something else happens in the next months that postpone it yet again. Because again, he's 58, which I think Mike Tyson just turned 58. Happy birthday to Mike Tyson. I think that I feel like that just happened. So happy birthday, Iron Mike. It's kind of like J-Rod said earlier in the show. I don't have a need to see Mike Tyson fight anymore. It doesn't prove anything to me other than the only result I feel like we're all going to get that we're going to like is Mike Tyson knocks Jake Paul into the bleachers, because we're not going to want to see an old man get knocked out. Nobody really wants to see that happen to our icons. And I just don't know. Like it's short rounds. It's big gloves. I don't know what his cardio is. And again, he's pushing 60. So what are we doing this for, really, other than just to feed our greed, to feed our need to see him out there one more time? I don't get the point of it. There, we got to find somebody scarier, a little bit younger, who Jake Paul could get in there. Why didn't he fight Deontay Wilder? You want to fight somebody who's a little over the hill and fight somebody who's a heavyweight who's very scared? Why doesn't he fight Deontay Wilder if you want to do it?
That'd be awesome. I'd be down for that.
What's the
now,
like?
I think the only reason you ask about it, and I haven't heard that mentioned, that's kind of fun, is the same thing. Now, Tyson and Deontay Wilder, obviously great heavyweight champions in their own right. Tyson was an icon, a public, a pop culture icon for years and still is. So you mentioned people don't want to see Jake Paul knock him out. I think because Deontay Wilder has gotten knocked out so viciously recently, you'd get a lot of the same thing where people are like, yeah, it'd be great if Deontay Wilder puts Jake Paul in the bleachers, but I think there's some people that don't want to see Jake Paul knock out Deontay Wilder too.
He's not going to knock out. What are we talking about here, dude? He's not going to knock out Deontay
That does
Wilder.
not look crazy.
It's a ridiculous.
I'm going to say it out loud. It sounds ridiculous.
You've said a lot of dumb things on this show. That's right up there, dude. Like that. He's not. But I'm just saying. You know what my point is? Like, if you wanted to go and do a super dangerous fight, do it of somebody who's of a quality age that we could do this with. Yeah, maybe it's not going to do the buzz. It doesn't capture the world like Mike Tyson does. But it's kind of sick that it does, because it's already medically been postponed, where they already had medical parameters, safety parameters to try and protect, I assume, Mike Tyson with bigger gloves and shorter rounds. Now, on top of it, we're postponing it till November so he can get a formidable time to properly train for this. I don't know, dude. Yes, my point remains the same. I don't.
You're against the elderly. I get it.
I'm not against the elderly. If anything, I'm for the elderly.
I don't know. Speaking of boxing, next week, Gervonta Davis steps back into the ring, heavy favorite against Frank Martin. You can get 4-1 on the underdog. You're going to pay the -600 for Tank Davis next Saturday night?
I don't think I am, actually. I think we've been talking about this with boxing lines and guys who are formidable. I just think there's something to betting on a guy who's as big a dog as Frank Martin is, just because he's really good. He's never lost. There's a little bit of a past here from the sparring game with them, but I don't know. I just think there's something to Frank Martin. He's a difficult fighter. You could say he hasn't been under the bright lights. That's always a thing against Gervonta Davis, but we've seen some guys have some success. So I think there's just something to throw in a little something on boxing underdogs who are capable these days. And for me, that's Frank Martin I think there's a possibility. We've seen vulnerabilities from Gervonta Davis. Even him by knockout is like minus 175. I'm like, that's pretty crazy that people think that Frank Martin's that prone to getting knocked out in this matchup. I think if you are going to go with Gervonta, I would go by decision. If anything, you get that at least 3-1.
Yeah, never forget that Frank Martin also took the South Carolina Gamecocks to the Final Four just a few years ago. Speaking of the boxing ring, Usyk and Fury, the rematch is on. That was a crazy fight because at the beginning it looked like it was all Fury. In the middle it looked like it was all Usyk. You could argue who won the last round. What are the chances that if we see that fight again, that Tyson Fury is still in his prime? I think that we now know that Tyson Fury has gotten punched in the head. I'm not saying he needs to retire like Deontay Wilder. I'm just saying maybe a tune-up fight before an Usyk rematch.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is he just makes so much money these days. Like, who do they pay a tune-up fight for against him? You know, like, and who are the guys out there that you really would tune him? Like, who's he going to go fight?
Paul.
Joe? And then yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, I think that these are one of those things where he's got to get right back in there with Usyk. What can he do? Man, I guess work on his, I would say the best method. He had a pretty good method, but I think what the thing is like once Usyk figures out that, and he's probably going to have it figured out that uppercut up the middle from a long range, you got to get to a point where he can wrestle him and lean on him against the ropes. And I don't think we've seen that from Tyson Fury. And when he tried, I mean, he got ragdolled by Usyk. He got thrown up against the ropes. So he's got to, I think, probably work on his strength a little bit. Strange as that is to say against Usyk, because he definitely didn't have to do it against Wilder, but Usyk is a Ukrainian tank dude. And so I think that's what he's got to focus on is can he win an inside game against Usyk and bring that to the table this next time around.
And Usyk has all the belts right now, so obviously Tyson Fury wants to get his hands back on those. And by the way, Tyson Fury and those ropes got very well acquainted in that fight. All right, let's talk some UFC. Hey, ladies. Tough 32 is on, Shevchenko versus Grasso. Honestly, I haven't watched Tough in a while. I don't know how much of this one I'm going to check out, but I'm interested in the fight when it goes down.
I am too. I saw the clip that went viral this week of Valentina refusing to let her team drink water. She's like, We don't drink water in training. After, not now.
I like that. That's a good accent. I didn't know you had that in you. When we brought on Alexander Volkov, why didn't you give him that?
Told us to go Russian ice diving. What do you think? Why didn't I do that? I'm terrified of him.
That's fair. Yeah, he was scary. Although, man, his interpreter is one of the greatest guys that I've ever met. If I've ever wanted to hang out with somebody, that guy just looked like he'd be a good time. Speaking of the ladies, Macy Barber and Thug Rose will be headlining UFC Denver. Rose in Denver at the top of the marquee makes a lot of sense. We've talked a lot about fighters still in their prime, right, during tonight's show in the queso. And really, you think about it like an Alexander Volkanovski. You think about it, Israel Adesanya. You think about it, Tyson Fury. It's been a very topical conversation. Is Rose still in her prime?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, she won in March. She beat Amanda Ribas by decision, for a nice little bounce back after a couple straight losses. The Carla Esparza fight was very, very strange. I think for her, this is going to be a big question because you have Macy Barber, who is, just crazy to say. Like, we're talking about who could be maybe the next face of the women's division. And Macy Barber, 26 years old. Seems like she's got everything. She's rolling on a big win streak right now. So I think this is a big moment for Macy, just as it is for Rose, because I think Rose is kind of solidified as one of those faces of women's MMA, and Macy's still trying to get there. So a win over Rose Namajunas, even at this point in Rose's career, I don't think she's completely washed or anything like that. I think it would mean a lot for Macy if she's going to do anything in this division.
Sounds like you're saying she's the future. Brendan Tobin and the Sports Machine, Sean Levine, here on the BetQL network. All right, let's talk about Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler supposedly have a fight coming up in about a month. UFC 303 in Las Vegas. We were supposed to have the press conferences. There was supposed to be a tour, kind of like we saw back in the day with Nate Diaz. I guess it'd actually be more comparable to the tour that he did with Floyd Mayweather, where it's going all around the world, including Dublin. That was supposed to happen earlier this week, BT. I was looking forward to it. I wanted to hear how sharp Connor's tongue was. I wanted to hear how much because Michael Chandler can talk into a microphone now too. I wanted to see the back and forth, and it didn't happen. You're concerned that it didn't happen, that maybe the fight's not going to happen either.
It's high. And it's impossible for it not to be just because of who we're dealing with here with Conor McGregor. I mean, he hasn't fought in a while, and if the rumors out there that he's dealing with an injury are true, I mean, yeah, of course you have to be on high alert for this because the guy is already coming off of a monster injury with a snapped leg. I don't care how many years ago it was and how many training sessions he's had. So my antenna are up. I know that the rumors have gone that it's going in a more positive direction, and people will throw at Conor's face, hey, I thought you never pull out of a fight. Don't be stupid, people. Like, the guy is coming off of a very, very dangerous, serious injury. If Conor McGregor does have to postpone this fight, and we don't have to, look, it sucks for Michael Chandler. Obviously, he's been waiting around forever, but if you have to punt on this fight for 4 months, do it. By no means should Conor McGregor be going into any type of a fight impaired after what he's already coming into the fight with the snapped leg.
Of course, we all agree with that. Although from the UFC perspective and a fan's perspective, what do you do, bro? Because I don't know if you've seen the rest of that card. It was Conor McGregor and it was a bunch of other people. And that's what you do on a Conor McGregor card. You don't have to stack it up like $299 or $300. You put Conor on there. You put some up-and-coming stars. I don't know what you do. I don't know if you keep Michael Chandler as half of it. I assume that if you just delay it and don't cancel it, then Chandler, he's waited this long, so he's not going to step in there. He's going to wait for the McGregor fight. What do you do? We're talking about now a month away.
Well, I think the tough thing, too, is, right, like you look at it, and typically in a situation like this, you only have to replace one fighter, right?
That's what I'm saying.
It feels like if you do this, you have to replace it with a completely new fight because I can't imagine Michael Chandler's just going to go fight anybody, right? Like you're going to
waited this long. There's no way.
The only, and so like, where do you go? It's a tough situation, man. I don't really have the answer. Typically, like I'll have something that's in the holster for it, but I don't really know because you can't really like say, hey, Mike, fight for the welterweight championship and take it away from Bilal. They can move that up. Can't really do that. Who's like a matchup for Michael Chandler that makes a lot of sense, especially at 170, do? Like Kamaru Usman. Like, do you pull him out of the bullpen? I don't know what you do.
No, none of that. Here's what you do. You call your boy Nate Diaz and you call your boy George Masvidal, and you're like, guys, what are you doing? Why are you guys boxing? We need a main event coming up about the same time period. If you guys are both coming back to the UFC, and I remember you said on last week's show that you said both of them you think are going to eventually come back sooner rather than later. Just give them all the money in the world and make that your fight. How you like that one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. But again, like I don't know what the contractual obligation.
Those are also guys I don't call last minute and be like, I'll pay you. Come back, put your name on the dotted line. I'll give you a lot of money. Short notice means nothing to those guys. They already hate each other. They're already in camp to fight. I think I just did Dana's work for him.
Here's the thing, though. Like, what is the payoff? Like, Dana probably has to buy out, like, the Honda Center that they are booked for in a couple of weeks. Like, you can't just – you can't – and what? Like, are you going to do that for a Jorge Masvidal Nate Diaz fight on 2 weeks' notice? I don't know, man. I don't know if you can sell that, to be honest with you. It's like this is one of those ones where like does Sean O'Malley put on the cape? I don't know. Like do they fast track something like that? Like this is one of those where yes, Dana is going to have to back up the Brinks truck if that is the case, because it probably feels like you're going to have to do an entire fight and do it on less than ideal circumstances. We're talking June 29th. So as we do this is less than 3 weeks notice. You're going to basically you have to be training already for some kind of fight. It's a really, really tough situation if Conor isn't able to fight. But I cannot, say this enough, Sean. If he's not good to fight, he shouldn't fight. Like he should not be pushing through anything to make this happen because he's already coming into this thing with an injury that nobody's come back from in a good way.
Yeah, and as soon as I heard that the fight was announced, I was like, wow, okay, cool, he's back. But I was always taking it with a grain of salt, right? Not that Connor pulls out of fights, but as you mentioned, coming off of the injury, all the other stuff outside the octagon, it was always a question. So fingers crossed, toes crossed that we end up getting that fight. Coming up next, we keep talking a little bit more fighting and we keep making a little bit more money together right here on the BetQL Network.